Welcome to the No Gluten, No Whey kitchen. Today I'm going to be making a gluten-free, dairy-free version of one of my childhood favorites, Colonial bread. This recipe has some significance to me because it was the first recipe I won an award for. Way back in the first grade, we had Colonial days at my elementary school and I made this bread and won first prize. So when I needed to be gluten-free, dairy-free, and no yeast, this is the bread I decided to try to recreate. Hello. The original version calls for 2 3/4 cups white rice.
Pick it up from there.
The original version calls for 2 3/4 cups of regular white flour, 2 1/2 cups of whole wheat flour, 2 cups of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, and 4 cups of buttermilk. Half of those ingredients I can't eat anymore, and so I needed to come up with a new version of this. So I think I've come pretty close, although it's been a while since I've had this bread, so it may be completely different, but I like the results. I'm gonna start with my bread pan. I like to use avocado oil. I'm gonna spray my bread pan, but then line it with parchment paper. I don't know that the parchment paper has any purpose other than I'm lazy and don't want to clean the pan. It works great for getting it out easy and nice and golden brown. I use the spray to hold the parchment paper in place. It's not really necessary, but it does make it much easier to pull out of the pan. My pan's all ready. I'm gonna set my oven for 350 degrees so that it can preheat while I'm mixing up the bread. So this is a quick bread, no yeast, because yeast is one of the things that I can't have. So if you're afraid of yeast, try out this bread and it may give you good results. It's a little tender for making into sandwiches, but it makes a really yummy open-faced ham sandwich. It's a little bit sweet to go with that salty ham. I'm using my stand mixer with my paddle attachment. I'm gonna start with my dry ingredients. So this is my flour blend. I use a combination of white rice flour, tapioca starch, and arrowroot powder. I'm going for 1 cup of flour, of gluten-free flour. And then I needed something to mimic that whole wheat flavor in my bread, so I went for a combination of sorghum flour and teff. Teff has a kind of nutty, sweet flavor to it, kind of like what you would expect from graham crackers. So the sorghum flour, I need 1/4 cup. Teff, I need 1/2 cup. If I can get it open. A little more. Go. And then for texture and flavor both, I've chosen some oat flour. I know oats can be controversial for gluten-free folks. There is some potentially misinformation out there. Oats in and of themselves do not contain gluten. So there are a lot of people who think that oats are glutinous and they are not. Gluten is the protein found in wheat and is mimicked by some other grains like rye, barley, spelt. Oats are not glutinous. However, Where that information comes from is the processing of oats often is cross-contaminated with gluten-containing grains. So if you are gluten-free for health reasons such as celiac disease, you're gonna wanna get a certified gluten-free oat like Bob's Red Mill. I've taken that gluten-free oat from Bob's Red Mill and blended them in my blender until I got oat flour. Of the oat flour, I'm going to use a half of a cup. To my oat flour, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons, or to my flour mixture, I guess, 2 teaspoons of xanthan gum. So xanthan gum is what helps the gluten-free flours stick together. Gluten's job in wheat flour is to give it that chewy texture that we're used to. So the xanthan mimics that. It doesn't quite replace it, but it's a good substitute. Oops, I forgot to pull out a teaspoon. Well, that's embarrassing.
It's in the sink.
Yep, it's in the dishwasher. That's real life. Okay, back on track. Xanthan gum, 2 teaspoons. I also need some leavening to help it rise. The original recipe called for 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and I've chosen to use 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then some cream of tartar. All 3 of those ingredients help with the rise in different ways at different temperatures. And because gluten-free baked goods tend to be more dense, I went with all 3 of these ingredients to give it a little more, a better consistency, a little more air in the, I know what it's supposed to look like. All right, so 1.
Less dense.
Less dense. 1 teaspoon baking soda. 1 teaspoon baking powder. And cream of tartar. Just for Jessica. What?
Cream of tartar.
Tartar, just for Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Miss you, Jessica. Half a teaspoon of salt. And last dry ingredient, brown sugar. Now I'm going for a whole cup of brown sugar. Original recipe called for 2 cups, but I just couldn't imagine needing 2 cups because that sounds very, very sweet to me. Probably as a first grader, I loved it because it was that sweet, but that's a lot of brown sugar. I'm not packing the brown sugar because again, it just seems like it would be way too sweet to add anything else. All right, now I'm going to combine my dry ingredients. And while that is mixing, I'm going to mix up my replacement for the buttermilk. So I know generally in glutinous cooking, when a recipe calls for buttermilk, if you don't have buttermilk on hand, you could add vinegar to milk and then get the flavor you're looking for from buttermilk. But because gluten-free flours are more dense, you need a denser liquid to soften them. So what I really want from that buttermilk is that thick consistency, and there really isn't a equal replacement in the non-dairy world. So to compensate for that, I'm going to use a combination of dairy-free yogurt. Today I'm using almond milk yogurt with some almond milk. Absolutely any kind of dairy-free milk products would work. Coconut milk would work. Cashew milk would work. Oat would work. Whatever you use in your daily life would work for this recipe. I choose almond milk because I do have a child that is allergic to cashews, so I don't want to use cashews. And I know a lot of people are sensitive to soy, so I'm avoiding soy at this point as well. So I'm going to mix equal parts yogurt and milk together to make my wet ingredients for this bread. I'm going to do 1 cup of almond milk, or almond yogurt, I mean. And since this is something I use all the time, this container is almost empty, so I'm gonna have to open my other container. The key here is modifications. So if you need to be gluten-free but not dairy-free, absolutely go ahead and use dairy buttermilk. That would still work. And if you have a sensitivity to the almonds, like I said, use whatever milk product works for your diet. I will warn you though, coconut milk and coconut yogurt are both a little sweeter, so it will change the flavor of the bread some. But you might like that. Okay, pour that right on in there. Scrape all the goodness. And mix it up. This is going to be a thick dough. And once it is, all of the ingredients are incorporated and you don't see any more streaks of yogurt or dry places, you're mixed up. Turning off my blender, mixer here. Scrape off the paddle. And then I'm gonna put it into my prepared bread pan and into the oven it'll go. It's going to bake for about 30 minutes. I will set my timer for 30 minutes and check it. You're gonna wanna see a nice golden brown color with, it'll have risen some, a little puffy on top. So let's get this in the oven and then I can show you what I mean. Just gonna smooth it around. I'm gonna move it right here underneath my fun little pillow so you can see. Squish it all into the corners, make sure it gets nice and even for my loaf. All right, beautiful. Into the oven it goes. Again, I'm gonna cook it at 350 degrees for about 60 minutes. All right, see you in 60 minutes. All right, the timer went off, my hour is up. Let's see if it's ready. Got my toothpick, let's do a test. Ooh, nice golden brown. No sticky mess. Looks like it's done. And here's the reason for the parchment paper. It makes it so easy to pull out of the pan, and best of all, no mess, no scrubbing, just clean it. Beautiful. I wish you could smell it. It smells delicious. As soon as this cools, I can slice it and have a taste. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and more important, share with your friends. Send me your ideas and I'd love to try them out for you. Thanks. Bye.